And Bobby loved it, actually. He went, huh? You're willing to play 3 out of 5? I said, yes. I've never even played 3 out of 5. Like at the majors, they play 3 out of 5 sets. Well, I think we should play the women should play 3 out of 5 sets.
Why is best of 5 sets tennis banned for women? If you're here just for the short answer, it's because of 19th century sexism bleeding into 2026, infrastructure and scheduling issues, along with maintaining a status quo that women never asked for. But let's break this down with the nuance and balance it deserves. Equal pay and representation has been a long sought after goal for women's tennis, with best of 5 sets tennis being deeply intertwined with it. While tennis does a much better job than most other sports when it comes to representing men and women fairly, it's still not 50-50. This year's Wimbledon final between Iga Swiatek and Amanda Anisimova was only the second time since the beginning of the Open era that a women's Grand Slam final was decided by a double bagel. Not winning a single game in the final is a crushing and heartbreaking defeat, but that's only possible because women have for centuries played best of 3 sets tennis. To starve women's tennis of 5-setters, the biggest factor that makes a Grand Slam diminishes the shine and allure that it truly deserves. Why hasn't it been implemented yet? Well, that's what we're going to break down. This much is certain. The best time to do it was probably the 80s. The next best time, though, is now. The lack of best of 5 sets tennis for women has had a tangible impact on women's tennis's representation and perception. How? There's many examples, with the infamous Battle of the Sexes from the 70s being a great one. An even better one is the conundrum that Amelie Mauresmo faces each year, and her perspective is the most unique one. She's not only the first female Grand Slam tournament director, she's also a former world number 1 and a 2-time Grand Slam winner. Every year, she defends her decision to overwhelmingly schedule men's singles matches at Court Philippe Chatrier's primetime night session.
Getting back to the decision about the night sessions, what do you think the consequences are of essentially telling women that they're not worthy of...
That's not what we're saying. I have to stop you right there.
Okay.
And it has never been that the girls are not worthy to play at night. I'm not the only one to make the decisions. We are talking about potential match length.
The omission of women's matches is a gut punch because Mauresmo herself fought many battles for equal pay and representation at Grand Slams, a war that she and the WTA won. Now in the same position, Mauresmo is making the same argument she heard from tournament directors as a player, except for one point. Her reason for scheduling men's matches is that they're best of 5 sets, which ticket buyers and broadcasters prefer, since it's longer, more exciting, and dramatic than the best of 3 sets that women contest. Going even a step further, Mauresmo thinks that women should play best of 5 sets tennis, at least in the finals. That's not something any tournament director has advocated for in the past. It's also the only time someone in Mauresmo's position is even attempting to explain why women's tennis suffers. It's not truly equally represented. Best of 5 sets tennis and best of 3 sets tennis are two completely different beasts. Almost every men's final that's considered iconic is a 5-set war of attrition, because a 5-setter pushes you to the brink of your mental and physical limits, and it also makes for one heck of an entertaining Sunday afternoon for fans. Here's a fun fact. Women did start out by playing best of 5 sets all the way back in the 19th century. In 1891, 4 years after they began competing at the US National Championships, the challenge round was best of 5 sets for a decade until 1901, after which the all-male council of the USNLTA decided to reduce it to best of 3 sets. Why? 5-setters were deemed too strenuous. Bessie Moore, who played 2 5-setters in this time period, didn't like this. She derided the lack of player canvassing and emphasized the importance of endurance in tennis. Her opinion was, despite a dress code that was opulent but restrictive. Regardless, best of 3 sets went from being the norm to becoming the rule. It wasn't until the amateur and pro tours were combined to create the open era in the 60s that this decision came to an unequal head. The open era meant that all tennis players could make prize money based on their performance in a year-long tour of big and small tournaments. The only problem was, this prize money was disproportionately lower for women. The reasoning was that women didn't generate much interest in tennis, that ticket sales were dominated by men, that women didn't play as well as men, and would not play five-setters like the men. None of those reasons were fair though. While women did play fewer sets than men, at no point did they ask for that rule. Whenever the equal pay for equal play argument comes up, most prominent female players have agreed to play 5 sets. It's the Grand Slams who've insisted on 3 sets to this day. With this growing divide and no solution in sight, Billie Jean King established the Women's Tennis Association in 1973. In the same year, she lobbied the US Open to adopt equal pay after securing a $55,000 banned deodorant sponsorship. However, Billie Jean King's and women's tennis's most pivotal battle came just a few months after the WTA's founding. Bobby Riggs, a 55-year-old former Wimbledon champion, challenged King, 26 years his junior, in a $100,000 winner-takes-all best-of-5 sets tennis match. There were no handicaps or special rules, and Riggs, a self-stylized chauvinistic pig, wanted to prove that women were inferior.
Serve and volley, which she does very, very well for a woman. And the male is king, the male is supreme.
While King wanted to prove that women were as capable and should be treated equally.
Now that Margaret went ahead and opened the door and did such a miserable job, I think that I can beat Bobby.
In retrospect, the battle of the sexes might seem silly or absurd, but the stakes couldn't have been higher.
You had a lot to lose in the battle of the sexes game, correct?
We had a lot to lose.
Playing in front of 30,000 people in the stadium and an astounding 90 million people on TV, it captured the public's imagination like never before. Unlike her rival, Margaret Court, who lost handily to Riggs a few months prior in a best-of-3 sets match, King moved Riggs all around the court, drawing him to the net and lobbying him to win in 3 straight sets, winning $100,000 and championing women around the world. Billie Jean King's win proved a point that she had spent years trying to prove, that women were just as capable as men and could not only play 5 sets like men, but also win against them. Her advocacy for women's tennis didn't stop there. Nearly 18 months later, King met with the Wimbledon Chair Committee to negotiate equal pay. She managed to increase it from 70% to 80% of the men's purse and also secured a promise of an annual review. A year after that, the WTA passed the resolution to play best-of-5 sets tennis, but no tournament would adopt it. In 1984, the WTA decided to take matters in its own hands. Chris Evert was not only winning Grand Slams, but she was also the WTA president at the time. She led the charge to adopt best-of-5 sets in the championship match of the WTA finals. This decision came after Evert and Martina Navratilova tried and failed to convince the Grand Slams to adopt best-of-5 sets. This rule was in place for 14 years, with Monica Seles and Steffi Graf each playing iconic 5-setters. Steffi Graf's opponent, Anke Huber, said 5 sets is great for women's tennis and great for the players. A few months before that, however, the WTA had reversed the Australian Open's move to switch to best-of-5 sets in the final. Why? Because the players and the WTA hadn't been consulted. While fair, it's a travesty that it didn't go through, as this moment in the 80s and 90s was the best time to make the switch to 5 sets. Tennis's popularity had exploded, sponsorships had increased exponentially, and the slams had built up their events tremendously off the backs of increasingly popular male and female players. Equal pay continued to be a huge pain point though. Women contended that they brought in the same, if not more, fans, money and broadcasting numbers as the men, but the majors refused to meet their demands, hiding behind equal pay for equal play, but also refusing to let women play equally. Things reached a boiling point in the 21st century. In 2006, Venus Williams wrote a scathing open letter to Wimbledon. She said she was disappointed in the institution she grew up admiring, that the chairman had admitted that women can play 5 sets, and that the difference in prize money, £456,000 in 2005, was less than the money spent on strawberries and cream in the first week of the event. A letter so strongly worded by a tennis champion and icon who knew a thing or two about being treated unfairly had to make a difference. And after decades of fighting for equal pay, started by Billie Jean King in the 70s, from 2007 onwards, men and women won the same prize money in Grand Slams. It was a momentous occasion with a lot of reasons to celebrate. But here's where everyone loses the plot just a little. The lack of 5 sets is a massive blow to the standing and appeal of women's tennis. Something a lot of past champions of the sport recognized all the way back in the 70s. With prize money now being equal in slams, it's harder to adopt 5-setters despite the detrimental impact it's having on women's tennis. How? For every other event except for the slams, men and women both play best of 3 sets tennis. Since women play best of 3 sets in slams as well, there just isn't a differentiating factor like there is for men. Winning 2 out of 3 sets is more predictable and has less upset potential. In a 3 out of 5 sets match, however, coming back from 2 sets down to win 3 sets in a row to win the match is special. There's more room for error, to find your form during the match, and it's a bigger test of mental and physical endurance. For fans, there's more drama, and watching a player claw back from the brink is a thrilling experience. That's just not the same as a 3-setter. Subsequently, it affects how often women get scheduled in show courts as well, because fans prefer longer matches with more momentum swings, more physicality, more drama, and more grit. Many players are also really hard to beat in best of 3 sets matches, but they fall short in 5-setters. The inclusion of it could have shifted several women's Grand Slam counts and rivalries. Tennis has always been ahead of the curve in terms of gender equality. Male and female players share the same facilities, same sponsors, same broadcasts and audiences. A lot of the biggest events happen at the same time, but the lack of 5-setters for women's matches in Grand Slams stops tennis from being truly equally represented as a sport. What's the hold-up then? Why haven't the slams implemented the format for women? There's many reasons, but for one, now that equal pay is in place, there's few reasons to switch to 5 sets. Additionally, for every round to be best of 5 sets, the Grand Slams would need 8 to 10 more courts to accommodate the longer matches, especially in the first 2 to 3 days of the tournament, when nearly 80 singles matches take place each day. Land restrictions and residential rules, particularly for French Open and Wimbledon, make it hard for any expansion. Starting earlier in the day would also be needed, which players won't like. The lack of collective willpower to make the final best of 5 sets, on the other hand, is the only thing keeping it from reality, as there's no scheduling or infrastructural limitations for the last match of the tournament. There's also the question of the best of 5 sets format itself, with 5-setters disappearing from many events in men's tennis. While that decision is routinely questioned, it's the driving force behind iconic matches, like the most recent one we witnessed between Sinner and Alcaraz at the French Open. The excitement, determination, anguish, pain and triumph in best of 5 sets is impossible to replicate and not that hard to implement, and women's tennis deserves all of it. The answer is quite straightforward, but the question still remains. Will the Grand Slams work towards truly equal representation for women's tennis? Well, if history is any indication, nothing's going to change. But the ball is in their court.